talk to me. No. So I buy my company. So it was $6. Yeah. No lie. $2. I'm sorry, take the money back. I was like, maybe it's just a change. Yeah, I'll be around. Actually, I'll be around. Wide open. Got nothing going. I mean, I guess well, so no, there was a guy in front of me that brought my sleep, and so I'm like, she's like, you barely see my well, that was a $5.50 deal, you know, and I'm like, man, you know, but he must have got it going then, right?
We'll be back tomorrow. I'll see you right. I see.
I was sitting there enough. I wasn't sure if I wanted to jump in the front house that was in your lane. I know. I wasn't sure if they weren't sure which one it was. Well, it's it's not changed in that time. My grandma back. Outside my realm. I know I try to no, supporting my son. Bill, you good? Yeah. You good? Okay. Let's do this. Good evening, everyone. I call the Monday, October 21st City Council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee.
Here.
Alderman Glad.
Here.
Alderman Schaefer.
Here.
Alderwoman Bainey. Here. Alderman McHenry. Alderman Devine.
Here.
Alderwoman Miller. Here. Mayor Jett.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to open up for public input, public comment. Michelle, is it Michelle Thomas?
Denise.
Denise, okay. If you could please step up to the podium and state your name and address for public record.
Michelle Themius, 2309 North Woodlawn Park Avenue. Good evening. My name is Michelle Themius and I serve as the District Director for Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. I appreciate the time I've been given for a brief update on the Congresswoman's work and how our office can help constituents. One of our office's core values is being accessible to the community, and we currently have 2 full-time office locations, one in Woodstock and one in West Chicago that are open every day from 9 to 5. One of Rep. Underwood's most essential roles is helping residents cut through federal red tape and ensuring 14th Congressional District receives its fair share of federal resources. We do this through helping residents resolve challenges with the federal programs like Social Security, Medicare, the VA, visas, and passports, and with what we call casework. So far, our office has returned over $230,000 in cash benefits to residents of the 14th Congressional District. We also support local governments and organizations in applying for federal grants by writing letters of recommendation and support for local projects seeking federal funding. And we're keeping a list of funding projects, so if the city has anything in mind, just feel free to let us know and we'll keep our eye out for funding. In addition to connecting with our staff in person, you can also email us through the website, underwood.house.gov, or call us at 630-549-2190. So in addition to providing constituent services, Congresswoman Underwood serves on 3 committees, Education and Labor, Committee on Veterans Affairs, and is Vice Chair of the Committee on Homeland Security. She's authored over 18 pieces of legislation, 6 of which have passed the House, and she continues to work with her colleagues to pass bills to make our government more accountable and transparent, secure our elections, tackle climate change, and lower healthcare and prescription drug costs. She's fighting to get tax relief for families hit by the new $10,000 cap on deductibility of state and local taxes. Her legislation, HR 1757, would allow nearly all of Illinois 14 residents, all but the very wealthiest, to deduct the full value of their state and local taxes. And the Congresswoman has introduced legislation to lower healthcare costs. Her Healthcare Affordability Act would reduce premiums for people who buy their own insurance on the marketplace. And she finally introduced legislation that would eliminate copays and co-insurance for certain drugs that treat chronic conditions like insulin, asthma inhalers, and heart disease medication. It's called the Chronic Copay Elimination Act. And of course, she's working to protect coverage for pre-existing conditions by banning junk insurance plans that don't cover hospitalizations or prescription drugs. I won't go on. I thank you for the time, and feel free to reach out. I will leave some handouts that we have in case you want to have them placed in City Hall so constituents can get a hold of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make a public comment? See none. Moving on to the consent agenda, items 5A through 5G. Is there any council members wanting to pull an item for separate consideration? Alderman Gleb?
B, please.
All right, anyone else? I'm looking for a motion for 5A, 5C through G. Alderman Santi?
I'll make the motion to approve consent agenda items 5A and 5C through G.
Thank you. Alderman Miller?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion on these items? Alderman Gleb?
Yeah, basically, kind of in favor of the whole concept. However, my reservations are the fact that we linked with 2 other municipalities, and where is the service going to be for us? I mean, there's no real time frame in there of when they get started. And the thing is, in here, I think it says something about by April 2020, but yet there's another spot on page 10 that specifically states out as far as that it'd be 45 days from the time we give them the nod.
That's correct. So there's 2 days. It needs to be complete by April 15th per the contract, so special provisions, but then there is also maximum duration from the time that they're given notice to proceed and they start. That's just so they don't string it out throughout the whole winter. So that it basically encompasses the winter pruning season and dormancy period, and it's a duration and time to wrapping up that we're very comfortable with.
But is that 45 days for just us, or is that for all the different municipalities?
And everyone that participated in the joint venture.
So they're gonna have all 3 municipalities done within 45 days?
No, not together. Each municipality has their own.
Okay, so when are we starting our program with them, I guess this is my question then.
That's something we're gonna need to coordinate with them. We do give them the flexibility up to the ultimate completion date to complete it. It's a standard condition of a normal winter trimming and pruning contract.
So it may get done in the fall and it may not get done until February or March next year, correct? The way I'm reading it. Because we don't have any exact date of when it starts.
Yeah, there's about a 4-month window to be done. And we'll keep coordinating and notifying the public as that work happens. And it's the same window that we typically do our in-house trimming and pruning for
we've had discussions as far as I've got constituents that are waiting and have been waiting for quite a while. They have some of these tree limbs that are hanging over the street trimmed and the sidewalks, and are they gonna have to wait till spring? I mean, that's my concern, or are we gonna be, the whole thing is it was headed up by Crystal Lake, so is Crystal Lake gonna get the first dot, or is possibly Algonquin gonna get the first dot because they've got the largest portion of the program? Are we gonna get pushed back to the back burner on this? Just kind of your opinion on it. I know you can't get
Yeah,
fast.
no, I mean, there's no specific pecking order other than it's over the same general duration that our in-house trimming and pruning that we have done is going to be done. So outside of it being done in probably a more condensed block of time than it was when we self-performed, we're gonna wait for the dormancy period, and we're gonna complete it at the end of the winter season, or before the end of the winter season.
Again, my reservation is just the fact that I'd hate to see us get pushed back all the way to early spring. If our guys were doing them, they would be out very shortly, starting the tree trimming process, and here we are waiting until 2020 to get it started, so. That's my only reservations on it. Like I said, the concept, I love the concept. It's not just at this present time, but doing these type of things will save us in the long run as far as long-time commitments.
Well,
So.
and in a future year, we can talk about tightening up the durations. Again, this is a standard contract condition that many other municipalities are using, and they are very comfortable operating this way, and it hasn't been an issue from anyone else that's participating in the program.
Well, if nothing else, at least when we talk to them, make sure that at least one council member does have reservations of time frame. Maybe
Let
we
them know.
can get it pushed up
I can let them know.
so that they realize that they want to keep us happy on the first year. Let's
We can convey that message.
kind of pamper us to say. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
That's all I've got.
Thank you. Alderman Schaefer?
I don't think we're on that item yet, but what Alderman Glad was just talking about was, I know in my ward, January, February, and March was pruning time quite often over the last few years when we were doing it ourselves. Winter time.
Troy, is that the usual?
I mean, they were
That's
cutting
correct.
down
For
big
a
trees
house?
That's correct.
big trees in January, so.
I mean, you realize, okay, this is in lieu of replacing one of our public works people, but now we're not replacing the public works person. Also, how does that affect one less person that's gonna be out there driving a plow that we have to find somebody else for? I don't know. I mean, am I right in assuming that too?
That's correct, and we've made some arrangements as far as our cul-de-sac work as well this winter.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think we're looking at contract. Other than that, like I said, I understand the
Any other questions? A, C through.
We were
G.
still on A through.
We're on A,
A
C through G.
Who made the motion for B?
No, we haven't got to
talking about it.
But we're bidding, I mean, we're voting.
No, we're on voting on 5A, 5C through G.
Okay. Sorry, you realize.
We'll go back to it.
Alderman Santi?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller. Yes. Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey. Yes. Alderman Schaper.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Well, we need to make a motion for B.
Yeah, so, motion for 5B.
I
Alderman
will
Santi.
make the motion as presented.
Thank you. Second. Alderwoman Bainey. Discussion on this item?
So my only other discussion is that the contract times are to commence within 48 hours of the receipt of the owner's notice to proceed and to complete not later than April 1st. If we have 1,000 trees and they have 180 days, that's 5 trees per day. Take the weekends out, that makes 7 trees per day. That's not unreasonable to prune 7 trees in a day.
Alderman Glad.
Yeah, and I understand it, but the thing is they're not just doing our municipality, they're doing the other two, and Algonquin is vastly larger than ours. That's my reservation, is the fact that if they get tied up too much with one municipality, are we gonna be forgotten? And I just wanna make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, that's when Troy gets to be the bad boy and goes after them.
That's assuming they're only working one municipality at a time, too.
Well, and again, we don't know that.
Any other questions, comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santi.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey. Yes. Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Alderman Schaper.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Thank you, council. First, individual action item is 6A, discussion to pass an ordinance amending chapter 4 alcoholic liquor. Chief, can you please present this item?
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item for council is to ask for council's consideration and approval in the amending of the alcohol liquor ordinance specific to chapter 4, sections 4.1 definitions, sections 4.6 license classifications, fees, approval authority and limitation on number of licenses, section 4-21 closing hours, and sections 4-24 special civic events, and sections 431 prohibitions. We're present and available to answer any questions that council may have, but I would note that we have basically 4 different things that we're trying to accomplish in this amendment. 2 is the addition or the further defining of the Class B liquor license. The second one is the prohibition of alcohol vaping, along with some updates to what would be considered a special civic event that we learned that we need to make some additions after meeting with the Illinois Liquor Control Commission.
Thank you, Chief. Discussion on this item by council? Alderman Glad?
Yeah, the way it's written here, basically, even though we created these new classifications and everything else, it still has to come back to council for each individual license?
Correct.
Even on the individual special civic events and all that?
Special civic event licenses is if it requires a street closing or police services, that's an endorsement, and that requires. The issue that we had was we were selling alcohol in our parks during city-run events, and we were allowing people with catering endorsements to participate. What we found out was on our end that was fine. On the state's end, that required a special use permit applied for by the state at a cost of $250 per event to the liquor license holder. Without addressing the location of the premise attached to their liquor license, they would be liable.
other questions, comments? Anyone in the public have a comment or anything on this item? Looking for a motion to approve 6A as presented. Alderman Devine? Last chance for discussion? None? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Schaper?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderwoman North?
Yes.
Alderwoman Rainey? Yes. Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman Sands?
Yes. Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is 6B, discussion to approve a Class B Mix and Mingle Incorporated at 1118 North Green Street, McHenry, and adopt an ordinance increasing the number of Class B liquor licenses from 18 to 19. Derek, can you please present this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So under the expanded definition for Class B that council just approved, staff have been working with Mix and Mingle to be able to have the opportunity to provide liquor service as part of their offerings at their facility when it's being utilized, rented, obviously, by customers. And they've filled out an application for this license. A background check has been done on them. There's been no issues. Staff met with them to explain and take any questions from them on the parameters of the license with no problems. And they are before council for consideration. So if council concurs, it's recommended that a motion be made to approve an ordinance that increases the number of Class B licenses from 18 to 19, and that a Class B license be issued for Mix and Mingle at 1118 North Green Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Discussion on this item? Alderman Glad?
Yeah, just for clarification, so that we understand it. If they receive this license and somebody comes in to rent the hall or whatever, who basically provides the alcohol? The person bringing it in, or the Mix and Mingle?
They currently have a bring your own license, so if you wanted to rent their facility for a private closed door party, you could bring your own alcohol in, and that would be legal because they have a bring your own. But if you
who
wanted
becomes-
their services
Yeah, who's liable for all that? I mean, Mix and Mingle?
for the
If
bring
there's
your
a
own.
problem or something?
Well, I don't understand what liability you're referring to.
Okay.
Liability falls on the business, right? David?
It does.
And the applicant is here. Nate, when you did the BYOB, if you could step up to the podium real quick. Did you do the BYOB until you move along with this process of getting this liquor license? Are you still going to allow the BYOB? Yeah.
We allow private invitation-only events to bring in beer and wine, and we also carry liability insurance for alcohol and general liability business insurance. We already carry that for both locations.
Okay, so it's all been thought out.
What
Yeah.
we're looking to do is offer a cash bar selling beer and wine at open to the public events that would be attended, general open to the public.
Open to the public? So-
Yes, like advertised as a music event or something like that.
Shamrock's
where-
the Fox or something like that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or any type of event where we're inviting the general public in, which would not be a private invitation-only event.
Okay.
It would be,
Any of the city events, wine walk type stuff?
yeah, come in, and we would have a cash bar, a small cash bar set up with beer and wine that people could buy and consume on site at our facility.
So it's not open to the public, I mean, it's whoever's renting the place, it's not where you're selling it just to anybody that walks in and out.
They have both.
We have events that are considered either private invitation only, where somebody is renting the space. And then we also have events where we host events, we open to the general public, and we also allow people to rent our space to host open to the public events. Anything that's deemed open to the public, general public can walk in, we would have a cash bar if we're gonna serve alcohol. Or the only time it would not be that is if we're participating in like a chamber event, like the wine walk, where we're a wine stop. And they're obviously providing the wine for the event, but that's the only time it would be that.
No different than Smith Garage.
Right, and we do this in Woodstock currently, this is.
I'm sorry, no different than what?
Smith's Garage.
Smith's Garage.
No, it's a different classification.
It's a different classification,
Bar in the city,
full
correct?
bar, but.
They have a full bar, we don't
Right.
have a full bar, we're just gonna basically buy packaged beer and wine and
So you're not serving at a bar? No, you
it's like
you
a,
mentioned
it's
the
a
bar. and you
pop-up bar. It's
It's a
a
temporary
temporary
counter.
bar, like, we're kind
Well,
of
it's
a
still gonna
pop-up
be pouring
event
to the
space.
public.
They are.
Yeah.
They have
So,
the right to.
does this license allow them to pour to the public?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments by the council? No? Open it up for the public input. Is there any members wanting to address the council on this item? See none, I'm looking for a motion to approve 6B as presented. Alderwoman Bainey.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Alderman Santi.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion? See none, clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Bainey? Yes. Alderman Santi?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
No?
Alderman Schaefer?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on, congratulations, Antay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 6C. That's a discussion to pass an ordinance of annexing property located at 1208 Charles Street, McHenry. Doug, can you please present this item?
Thank you, Mayor Jett. The owners of the property located at 1208 Charles Street are requesting annexation to the city to connect to the city sewer system. Upon annexation, they would be zoned RS3, medium-high density, single-family residential due to the property size, just about 10,000 square feet. Council concurs. It is recommended that the motion be made to approve the ordinance annexing the property. Mayor and City Council would vote on the ordinance. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Doug. Questions or comments by council? Alderman Schaefer?
Maybe it's in there, but I just, is there any north, south, east, west, anybody around there that's annexed in correct right now?
No.
Or is this the first one?
To the east, I'm sorry, I should say to the east, yes. VFW.
Oh. None of the residential though, west, north, or south are, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, my comments are, have we looked at the roads over there, the right of way? What kind of problems are we gonna have with the people across the street? If we take over the right of way, everything's encroached way out there. It's gonna be a surprise to all those people on the other side that they can't be parking all that junk and everything else that they have out there. I think there's a porta potty out there and everything else. I mean, a right of way is gonna go in past the roadway. And that means not just on the one side of the road, but both sides of the road, the ordinance takes effect.
Correct.
Has that been explained to the people across the street?
I did not.
Okay, and I take a look at that, and we're bringing in another street, which would be rated as probably a 3, for the condition of it, if it's rated that high. I mean, what's the benefit of taking in this one property, you know, to the applicant? Yes, I can understand that they want the city water and sewer, but, what kind of liability are we taking on a roadway like that? I mean, it's another 170 feet of roadway that we have to maintain. That's, again, we've got how many 3s out there right now that we haven't even worked on yet, as far as our street programs, and yet we're gonna take in another. And this being a leading road into the McHenry VFW, you know there's gonna be a push for that road to get upgraded as their area gets upgraded. And with the revenue they've been getting, they've been slowly really working to, you know, going to town on working on their property. So they're gonna want the entranceways cleaned up as well. Like I say, it just brings up questions that I've got as far as, you know, it's not just a simple annexation that, you know, was in the middle of a road and across the street was, you know, the city, you know, this across from Charles Street or something, and it was just Charles Street. But if you're talking Lake Street, I I came over here, and it is not really in very good shape. And of course, I'm sure it isn't built to city specs as well. So are we annexing in a road that's gonna be a major problem to us down the road? And we've taken in a lot of liability because one property needs water and sewer, and we could still supply them with water and sewer even without an annexation.
Any other questions, comments? Alderman Sandy?
I think that, you brought up the portable.
I think that's
Yeah,
what I
that's,
saw.
I think that's on the VFW property for that
Is
little
it?
small field, yeah.
No, it's right on the corner there,
Yeah,
but-
it's right on the corner, but I'm 90% sure that's, because that small field, the Pinto field it's a Pinto field, I think,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, there's, it's so far away from the main building that they've always had a porta potty out there for those people.
Mhm.
So that's not, I don't believe that's part of that.
But we don't know that for a fact one way
Well,
or the other.
I mean, I've seen it, where I see it sitting.
I can verify.
Yeah, it's on
It's
VFW
VFW
property.
property.
Personal porta potties.
Yeah.
for the VFWs.
That's all I have.
Any other questions, comments by council? Anyone from the public like to make a public comment regarding this item? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve 6C as presented. Alderman Santi?
I will make the motion on 6C as presented.
Thank you. Alderman Miller?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Alderman Glenn?
I'm just still gonna comment, I think we're jumping into this, taking on more liability than we really need to.
Anyone else? Clerk? Alderman Schaefer?
There was some repairs on that street done just recently. Did we do that, or did the township do that? Who did that?
We're talking to the street.
That'd be the township, right on Charles Street there?
No, it was done right on Lake Street, right at the corner of, like, right where that arrow's pointing in our picture. It's like pointing
Yeah, it's
to
right
the-
there.
It's pointing to there was a huge pothole there, and it just recently was filled. I mean, if it wasn't us, I don't
Yeah,
know
I'd
who
have
did
to
it.
follow up on that for you. I mean, in general, most of the patching we've been doing has been in Lincoln Park recently. But I can follow up on that specific location. Yeah.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe it was the VFW that finally did some repairing out there.
Oh, okay.
I think that, I'm pretty sure it's on their property, because it is in like where that
It's like
arrow is
right on the
drawing,
line, yeah.
or a little bit east of that arrow. Yeah,
If that line is correct,
yeah,
it's right on it.
I've hit the pothole numerous times, and it's been repaired.
Yes, it was brought to my attention.
It was brought to both of our attentions,
Yes.
yes. That's all I have, thank you.
Just was wondering on that, because that might give me a clue to something.
Hey Troy, or Doug, that property from the arrow that's on the picture to through the S, that's all VFW property, is that correct?
That's correct.
So anything after the arrow, so it's that small strip there? Okay.
Property line is
Not much
pretty much
there.
almost square. That corner
Yeah.
that we were
It's not
talking
much.
about, yeah, west of that line. So they're gonna have to move that, get it out of our right of way. And, again, you know, you take a look at all those vehicles that are parked all the way to the roadway. Are we going to enforce our right of way or not? I mean, because part of the city of McHenry, we should be uniform all the way across.
Is there anything on that property that would,
Across the street?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have sidewalk out there, so they're not blocking the sidewalk. Their driveway is short, they're not encroaching on the road, so I wouldn't, from my standpoint, I would not send them a notice for anything.
thank you.
You would not,
I would not.
you would not enforce the ordinance.
I don't have an ordinance that says,
If we annex it, it's right of way, and you can't have vehicles parking in the right of way. I mean, no,
okay,
I'm just saying, you know, I mean, yeah, we could bend it here, or we could bend it there, but when do we stop bending ordinances? I mean,
I
that's why
think we
we
have to
create
use common
ordinances
sense.
to enforce, and if we're not gonna enforce those ordinances, then we should change them. But more than anything else is, my concern is the condition of that road that we are going to take liability for and have to work on when we have how many other streets in the city that are rated as 3s, and there's no way you can convince me that this thing is any better than a 3, if it's that. Because, again, it was built out in the county years ago. I'm sure that it has nowhere near the infrastructure base and everything that we would normally require on a street. So, I'll leave it at that.
Alderman Schaefer.
Is there a hardship for this request, or is there a system failing, do we know? Or failed?
Yes, there was a hardship to the request.
Thank you.
Alderman Glenn.
Yeah, just the fact that it's not the first time that we would have a property that did not annex to the city that we would provide city water and sewer. I'm not saying we don't provide them city water and sewer. My concerns are the others that I've stated.
Any other questions, comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santi,
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller,
Yes.
Alderman Devine,
No.
Alderwoman Maney,
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer,
Yes.
Alderman Glad,
No.
Mayor Jett.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is discussion item, capital development study presentation. We have Baxter and Woodman here. If you'd like to step up to the podium. And I understand that Derek has your.
I'm a tough guy.
Yeah, I don't know, that's pretty scary. See how this goes.
I did make a copy of the presentation here. Yours, so you can follow along.
You'll have it up on the screen.
Or, you want it? Get together?
They want you to save those.
Okay.
Pass them down there.
All right.
Oh, you got it.
Everyone have them?
Yep.
All right, great.
Yeah, Ross, you wanna?
No, I
go ahead
just
and
wanted to
start it off?
say, over the last 8 months or so, we've been working with Baxter and Woodman on the capital development fee study. It was a pretty comprehensive study that they performed on the infrastructure for water and sewer within the city, but then identified some future land development areas that play a role into that. That's what the map is that they have up front. A couple of different options are laid out here, so we're gonna have to make some decisions on the path we wanna take moving forward with this, with determining our fees. And Troy and I are gonna be here after Baxter and Woodman is done to field any questions that we can on our end. And so, Carolyn?
Take it away. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us out tonight to share the study that we've been working on here for the city. Again, my name is Carolyn Greaves. I'm a region manager for Baxter and Woodman, but a water system engineer at heart, and been working on this project with Tim Chan to my left. Tim's a water and wastewater engineer and one of our, well, actually our rate study expert, and is wonderful at crunching numbers. And to my right here is Jennifer Sorensen. She's one of our senior environmental engineers, and was very helpful on working on this project for you tonight. So before we really dive in, and before I totally click to the next, I just want to do a quick kind of overview recap on this. And like Ross was saying, we've been working with city staff on this for several months here, and it really is a comprehensive review of a couple components. And first and foremost, where are we looking at proposed development here for the city? So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and we talked several meetings with city staff on when we expect that development to come in and how we should start planning for it. Once we had a good grasp of the development, we talked about what your existing infrastructure can handle and maintain. Can your existing infrastructure, your water treatment, your wells, your storage, do we need extra one? Absolutely. Your water treatment, your wells, your storage, your wastewater treatment, sanitary sewer, lift station. We looked at the capacity of all your existing infrastructure and how it would be impacted by the proposed future development. Once we did that, we identified what possible improvements were necessary to be able to support future development, came up with a cost for that, and then took a look at what some recommendations for capital development fees would be to be able to support that future development. And you'll have noticed when you read through the report, we do have a couple of options on both the water and the sanitary side, so we're going to explain those And I can't see Alderman Miller. Would you mind pushing that back just a little bit so I can see her there? Thank you. So we'll share what those are for you as we go through here. So if you don't mind going to the next one. So this is just a quick summary of your existing capital development fees. I believe the last time we did a kind of a thorough analysis on those was about early 2000s, 2002, 2003. And I know you've been addressing them over the years and doing that. So then this is, again, looking at in depth of how we need to address these moving forward. If you could go to the next one. So first and foremost, like I mentioned, we really took some time to identify where development may occur here in the city. And you will see there's two colors here on this map. And you'll see the yellow is what we are calling near future development, and the pink is what we're calling distant future development. And by talking to Doug and Ross and Troy, we really decided that probably within the next 10 to 20 years, we could see build out of the development there that's in the yellow. Anything in the pink would be really kind of past that stage, so 20 years plus. So that's really getting beyond where we want to start doing some planning. So we focusing on what is in the yellow for primarily for the recommendations for your improvements. But we kept the pink in there because we know development can kind of come and could change as development may do, but we wanted to kind of keep that in the big picture. But the primary focus is looking at what we call the near future development, which is in the yellow. If you can go to the next one. Once we establish what category the development fell into, we came up with what we call a population equivalent. Essentially what this is how many people are we expecting from this development to be able to impact the system here for the city. So by looking at the type of development that we might expect in these areas and the projection for growth in these areas, for the near future development, we are looking at about 4,500 people, equivalents of people, in terms of how much your system has to be able to support. For the distant future development, that is an additional 10,500. So that is a bigger jump looking at that distant future development. All right, I'm actually going to now kick it over to Tim. Talk a little bit more about the deep dive we did on the water system.
Yeah. Taking a look at that map, it doesn't show up quite as well as I could wish it would, but.
The printout is okay.
Oh, okay. The city of McHenry right now has 4 water treatment plants that provide water to your guys' system. You guys have 2 emergency backup wells that have currently no treatment. So that's going to be wells 12. There's 13 that's already been drilled, but there is no well pump in that currently. Well 11 is the only site currently east of Fox River, so that kind of provides additional resiliency to that side of the system because there is a single pipe crossing across the Fox River currently to support the east side. With the population projections that Carolyn just mentioned, we took a look at what are the build-out costs for each of these individual well sites to build a water treatment plant around them. Right now, the city of McHenry's water treatment plants are roughly at capacity given a max day demand, so typically that's going to be your heaviest summer during a dry period when a lot of your residents and businesses are using water. So if you flip to the next slide. We came up with 3 primary options. So option 1 is going to be building out well 11, which is on, again, the east side of the river over the near future developments. Well 11 is actually a shallow well, meaning it only provides roughly 500 gallons per minute back into your system. This is able to support the near future development up to its full build out of roughly 5,000 population equivalents. Option 2 is going to be building out wells 12 and 13. Now this is near your fire department, I believe, and that provides about 1,500 gallons per minute, so that's going to be a much bigger supply to your system, and consequently is more expensive with the addition of the deep well pump that's required for it. So what we did was, it obviously became the most expensive option because it is so oversized just to handle the near future development. We took an analysis to see, how far of the distant future development that you guys are potentially looking at building out in the next 20 plus years, and found that wells 12 and 13 can support well throughout the near and future developments. So then we divided the total cost of that across all of the full population equivalents of the 15,000 that would come. If you flip to the next slide. So here, it might be a little bit easier to read in your packets, is a comparison of your existing water connection fee against the three options. Again, option 1 is going to be well 11 build out east of the river. It's a shallow well, provides 500 gallons per minute. And then option 2 is going to be wells 12 and 13 west of the river, but much larger. And then option 3 is just dividing that over the full population build out. Any questions? I can answer about the water overview.
Let's go on to sanitary and then.
Sure.
Excuse me, my questions. Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. So just as we did on the water side, we did on the sanitary side. So the city has a network of sanitary sewers, lift stations, and force mains that takes all the wastewater to the treatment plant for treatment. So we needed to look at, if you're gonna be adding about 4,500 PE to your system, how is that gonna impact the capacity of those existing sewers and lift stations? So we did an analysis of all the sewers that were tributary, and we wanted to determine what improvements were needed for those. And we looked at 2 options. Option 1 was just looking at no changes to your system. Run the system as it is right now. And then option 2 was added because the city is currently looking at proposing to redirect the discharge from the Friend lift station, and they wanted to see what impacts that would have on freeing up some capacity to the sewers we were looking at, and how that would impact the connection fees. So you can go to the next slide. So both options required improvements to the sanitary sewers and the lift station. When we were looking at option 2 and redirecting the Friend lift station, you'll see that the lift station cost goes down because now we didn't need to upgrade the Blue Lagoon lift station for improvements. So it did help reduce some of the impact of that, but the cost for doing the Friend lift station redirection of flow was not included in these numbers because that's a product the city's currently looking at for helping out with their existing system for that. And then we also had to look at the wastewater treatment plant capacity. So for the near future development, no improvements were needed at the wastewater treatment plant to handle that additional flow. However, the flow that we're gonna be adding to the treatment plant is gonna make the plant go to 90% of its capacity, which means that Environmental Protection Agency is gonna be triggering that re-rating capacity of the plant. And they want you to look at, do we need to expand the capacity of the plant? Because you're now getting almost to the 100% design average flow of that plant. So since the near future development was taking the majority of that excess capacity you have right now at the plant, we were putting the fee for doing that study onto the connection fee process here. So that was at $148,000 to do that study that would be required by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. So if you want to go to the next slide. Now, just as with water, here are just tables summarizing what your existing connection fees are for sanitary sewer, and then the 2 options. One was no change to the existing sanitary sewer system, or number 2 is looking at the redirecting the Friend lift station discharge to another location. Go through the comparison.
Can you flip to the next slide, please? Thank you. So here we have presented a comparison of the proposed options for water, options 1, 2, and 3 against neighboring communities. Just with an asterisk, we labeled the date that these ordinances were last updated by the surrounding municipalities, as they may be updated since then, but are not publicly available on their ordinance currently. If you flip to the next slide, this would be the comparison for water on non-residential connections, and has the similar caveats for the dates.
So the next slide is now the same thing as looking at the sanitary sewer side of what the connection fees are for your guys' community, existing, proposed, and what your neighboring communities have for both residential and your non-residential connection fees. And then if you wanna go to the last slide. I think one more beyond where we're at right now. We wanted to just take a look at how does your water and sewer fees together compare with the community? Because our water fees were a little bit higher, and then the sanitary fees were on a little bit lower side of it when we're increasing them. So, you know, the first column is your existing connection fees of both sanitary and water together. And we took a 3-bedroom, single-family home, that's a typical size of a home that you'll see for development, what your existing fees are. Then we took the 2 lowest options from water and sewer, and came up with what that connection fee would be. And then we took the highest 2 options. And we kind of excluded option 3 on the water, because that was so much lower than everything else, that we wanted to just take the first 2 options of water, doing on the east side or on the west side. And then we also then took your neighboring communities to kind of see what their water sewer connection fees were together. And you'll kind of see that you're kind of sitting in the middle of those fees. You're not the highest, you're not the lowest, but when you put these options together, you're gonna sit somewhere right in between the middle of what your neighboring communities are. And we also looked at a non-residential connection of like a 1.5-inch meter for a commercial or industrial industry coming in. All right, so we threw a lot of numbers at you. Lots of numbers. Do you have any questions for us?
Council? Alderman Glad?
Yeah, okay, now this is the fees on water and sewer, and can't believe that we're not looking at much larger rates for sewers, considering we should be looking out at the expansions that we're gonna need on the South Wastewater Treatment Plant in the future with proposed possible properties that come in down in the future, like the pink. And it's all in our FPA. That concerns me. You know, we just took a big hit in the last couple of years in the debt service for what we did on the South Treatment Plant. And I don't want, I mean, if we had a population explosion or development explosion again, like we had in the mid-90s, we could see a rapid advancement of needs. And are we going to wind up charging our residents for an expansion on the south when we haven't even paid for the last expansion? And that's a concern to me. Again, all these fees were originally set up years back with the intent that growth pays for itself, and it hasn't been lately. And it really didn't help us by slashing our impact fees as well. Some of them I could understand that, yeah, maybe they could have slashed some of them, but some of them I didn't feel that it was appropriate to do, because what we're doing is we're borrowing from the future. And those attacks are gonna happen. Another reservation I have is the fact that besides the sewer and water, we're also talking storm sewers, which we haven't even looked at on this survey or anything else. And there's gonna be a lot of potential impact with new growth to a lot of our drainage ways, drainage pipes and everything else, the sewers. And it's a shame that we didn't look at that as well as just the water and the sewers, because that could be just as big of an impact to us as anything else. Let's see where everybody else is on it.
Alderman Schaefer?
Just for the neighboring communities, they seem like pretty distant for when they were last updated, those dates. Because didn't we have a better comparison when we were looking at our impact fees of what those, because I thought there was some things that were relatively changed to 18 and 19 in some of those. This is what you, I mean, when you looked at it, you were looking at obviously their ordinance?
Their current ordinances,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, just wondering, because we had, when we, and then like for our stuff, you took into the fact that our impact fees that we just recently changed. Okay. It just seems like those are kind of old.
So can I
Did it
just,
seem like that to you? I'm not, I don't know.
Well,
I'm just asking.
Just before you go, Ross, our comment when we looked at this was, the likelihood is these communities are about to start their own review and update as well, because some of them are getting a little bit old, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 2 and a 3, but then there's like 5 and 11 years, and that's, in some of those communities, I know it's hard, but, you know, comparing, you know, tax base to tax base too, their communities would probably be rated differently than ours, and types of homes and things like that too, which doesn't come into play here, but something that we have to consider as well.
I guess this is a question, comment about, just to address that, Jeff, or maybe it brings up other questions, but I mean, really the comparison of other communities is just made to show where we're at in comparison to other communities, right? I mean, the improvements, the costs that we're talking about are the costs for our improvements to our system. So just to clarify, it's not a race, or it's not a competition of rates, it's just to show where we're at. The dollar amount is set based on what we actually need to have done.
What you actually need to have done for development only.
So when you say that too, I totally get that, I appreciate that comment, because in public, in government anyway, at least you always are comparing to your next door neighbors, and it's always hard for me because it's not like that in the real world. They have, when you say that it was only for development, that means that these fees would be only on new development and wouldn't be spread across our whole entire system? Or are these fees spread across our whole entire system? Or only on new increases is only coming with new development would take that on?
These fees
Does that
would be
make sense?
imposed on any new development, and that, when you collect that fee is supposed to be put towards future improvements based on the study. So when you get into the nuts and bolts of the study, it's gonna say, if this area of town develops, it's gonna impact negatively over here. So the fees that you collect for this development are supposed to be there to help offset the costs of the improvements that you need to make downstream.
Okay. That, I just wanted to make sure that it was coming through development and not a system-wide thing like we did with the South Water Treatment Plant and stuff, where we extended those fees to every user, so to speak.
This is just for new development.
Right.
Yeah, it's for any development. Keep
And
in
that
mind
explains
also,
it when you're talking about well 11, when the development's over here on the west side of town and the well 11's on the east, so, thanks, Ross.
Alderman Sandy?
Just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The areas marked in yellow, where our definition is, that's what should happen within the next 0 to how many years?
0 to 20.
0 to 20 we're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay, and early in the presentation you brought up an estimated population increase. The population numbers you received from where?
So that is based on what the development type is. So if it's a single family home, we estimate 3.5 people per that home, and that's how we come up with the population estimate per development.
Per development, okay, but I guess, is this wrong to ask, like, for a total population? I mean, is this what we're looking at that may be coming into the city within the next 20 years?
So in the next 20 years, you're looking at just shy of 5,000.
Shy of 5,000. And that's, you're estimating on that, in those population numbers, or is that received by a second or a third?
We gave some input on that, and
Okay.
it's based on past developments.
Okay.
These are based on historical numbers of subdivisions and zoning that have been accumulated from subdivisions, so they didn't come out of thin air or anything like that.
It's platted lots that are
Right,
already
right,
platted.
right.
But so there's no outside sources for your
No.
information in regards to population estimates?
Nope, not at all. All just what
Okay.
Doug said, his historical here for the city.
And, I guess it's, when I look at Lakewood and see these numbers, isn't it, I don't know how to say it, but isn't it a little bit unique village there? Don't they work off of the Crystal Lake system at all? They don't?
There's a small portion of Lakewood that does go to Crystal Lake, but
Okay.
from a water perspective, they're all on their own system. There's a little bit of wastewater that goes to Crystal Lake.
That's it?
Yeah,
Okay, that's all I have right now.
sure.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, I was gonna say, again, it's nice to compare where we're at with other communities, but, you know, to kind of piggyback what Mr. Moorfield brought up, and that's the fact that, you know, it's just a comparison. We have to look at our town and what our town is gonna need, and we have different types of hoops that we have to jump through, you know, I mean, where maybe another community doesn't have to put in a lift station, we do, and things like that. So, I mean, you know, trying to do a comparison to others. Lakewood, needless to say, the smaller the community, the larger the costs are gonna be for any kind of development that they need to do as far as their infrastructure, because they are such a small community. The larger this community, I'm sure we'll probably see where Crystal Lake, you know, should be less than us because of that, you know. Commercial wise, I don't think Lakewood even has that much commercial, so what little they have, that's drastically impact because there's such a much larger amount of infrastructure for a much smaller amount of commercial. So I just think more than anything else is we should really be keying in on to make sure that we have what we need for future growth.
Yeah, it's really, I'm sorry, Alderman.
Yeah, no, I just.
There's an excellent graph on 150 that kind of explains it. That's not in what we just went through, but in our, it kind of has the table of projected population equivalents. Talks about single family and commercial and how those were some of the numbers like you were talking about, Doug, how you arrived at those.
You know, we've taken in, like what Doug said, you know, figures of past developments and what it created as far as impacts to residents. The thing is the trend had been more and more over the last 15, 20 years with smaller and smaller families as a general rule. However, that trend could reverse the other way too, and then your population could be much greater because of that. I mean, we've got so many homes out there that I've seen, young adults that really don't want to start a family yet. They're both working and they both buy their starter home and everything else. And so they're living in a 3-bedroom home, just a husband and wife. You know, in some cases, you've got young adults that aren't married and they just decide that they're going to invest into the future and buy the house now, as long as they can afford it. So, you know, it's very difficult, I understand, to figure out for the future where we're gonna be in population. I think we'll never be right on anyway, but we just wanna make sure that whatever developments comes down the road, the major impacts are paid by future growth. And that's my main concern more than anything else. And you know, water, sewer, drainage ways, whatever it is, you know, all that's gonna be factored in.
Ross?
So just for reference, in this year, 2020 is a census year, so we're gonna have a better idea of where we came from 2010. But over the last 10 years, since 2010, we issued 158 new single-family homes permits and 362 new multifamily units. So if you do the math on that, and you do 3.5 persons per dwelling, your population that we've increased in the last 10 years is only 1,425. That's 1,425. So, we're talking about in the next 10 years, almost 5,000. But historically, if you look at the last 10 years, we're a tenth of that.
But again, you could look at demographics of age, and as older couples pass away, or one passes away and the other one goes into a home or whatever, and they move away, I mean, it's younger families that are buying these homes. And in a lot of cases that I've seen to where, needless to say, if the husband and wife have 2 kids and only one income coming in, they're gonna buy a smaller home, but they're still gonna have that population, you know. And that's what I seem to see more than anything else.
And the other thing I wanna make mention of is, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we should be doing a study like this every 10 years roughly. You know, we haven't, it's been almost 15 or 16 years since the city has looked at these fees, or the infrastructure overall. So when you look at the future, you know, that's kind of like just identifying, like, yes, these areas are potentially gonna be developed, but, you know, do we need to really take them into account? Maybe 10 years down the road, those are gonna be the near and not the future. And then we're gonna have those other areas around town, you know, be the future.
You know, we look on the east side of the river on the yellow area, south of Chapel Hill, well, that's school property. So has that been taken into account as far as population, fewer population growth? I mean, they bought, I don't remember, what is it, about 100 acres at $2.5 million, back about 16, 17.
Is this the area you're talking about?
Further down.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did include that.
Okay. Because, like I say, I mean, now, with the way 156 is talking, and, oh, they're gonna bring everything into west eventually, which if we have a population growth, a vast population growth, I can't see where they could do that. But there's a $2.5 million piece of property that's sitting on the other side of the river that if the city, or if the school decided to sell, because they changed their path of the direction, that's gonna add to a lot more residential also. And we need to prepare for possibilities of things like that.
She's got, that's in your numbers,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Page 151.
Yep.
Alderwoman Miller?
So I'm just gonna add a different conversation to echo Russ's thoughts process here. The cost of development, when you're looking at consuming new construction, it is a huge factor for a builder, which I have been in my past. And those are dollars that you bring back through the cost of the sale and ultimately pass on to the buyer. And using 10-year-old numbers or 15-year-old numbers or 20-year-old numbers or projections are not realistic. So I have to echo my friend over there that we should be doing this study more frequent than not, so that we are in alignment with our neighboring communities and competitive, so that when a builder / developer comes to us and says, I'm thinking about taking on a new project in McHenry, we're not whack. Because if we're whack, they're going somewhere else. Because those dollars and cents do get passed on to the consumer, and if they're out of alignment, they'll just move on to a different project. So I wanted to just echo it from a different perspective, that if we're looking at these numbers and keeping them in play for a long time, we're not in touch with what's going on in the real world. There is an absolute pent-up demand for new construction. And we've been very blessed this year in issuing a lot of permits by waiving some fees. So we need to make sure these numbers are right on for what we need, but very competitive in the marketplace as well. So a smaller window of planning and revisiting this is more frequent, to me, is prudent.
Can I just add something to that? When we're finished with this, and we'll work with city staff on this, is we'll give the spreadsheet to city staff, so you can use this annually if you want to kind of recheck and see where things are at and do the update. So you'll have that tool moving forward.
Alderman Santi?
What she just stated, I guess, would staff be comfortable reviewing? I totally understand where we're coming from. We probably need to do a study like this every 10 years. If you know, maybe that's a maximum number. But would staff be comfortable reviewing what they would hand off to us in regards to numbers to to take a look at once a year, once every other year, to say, hey, are we still in place? We've fallen off, we've gone one way or another. We need to bring this back to council and have a discussion to possibly make an adjustment, and, you know, could be meaning adjustments to some of these fees, whether it's increasing or decreasing. Is that, would you be comfortable doing something like that?
I think, and Troy, you can back me on this, but I think if you start to see a massive influx of development happening to where you're building out those near future developments rather quickly, and you see that population rising, then absolutely we would say, hold on here, we're gonna be getting into these future development sites, we need to revisit this. And that's when we go back and we say, hey, you know, and at that point, money would just be rolling in. You know? And if you're getting to that point, it's funny. But if you're getting to that point where you're getting to those future development sites, yeah, we definitely need to revisit it. I mean, it's something we need to keep tabs on. Maybe we haven't, you know, with the downturn in the economy, we overlooked it in the past, but I mean, I'm comfortable. Troy, you agree on the infrastructure side and public works side?
Another point to consider is, as development naturally occurs, with every major development, there are certain decision points as far as X number of PE trips one of these facility expansions that we have to do. So just naturally, the course of development is gonna force us to, at times, look at the PE trends and what facilities expansions those more, because there always is a dilemma with, you're gonna build out a facility that has a capacity for X population, but you're gonna need to build it before you hit that full population. So you're always gonna have that, and that very low water number is the perfect example. If you divide up the cost of a Western water plant by the total population it can serve, you can get a really low number. But you would give yourself a dilemma of, when the expansion is warranted, you could come up short.
And for instance, that happened out in Legend Lakes.
If it doesn't get, if it doesn't get completed, because if now you're sitting on property that we had estimated numbers that should have been coming in that are sitting there just, land, just open land.
When Kimball Hill approached the city, it was, their development warranted an upgrade to a lift station on Dartmoor. In the annexation agreement, I think it was at 80%, Doug, somewhere around there, 80% build out of Legend Lakes, they were required to update that lift station on their dime. So in annexation agreements, in development agreements, if we see that something is gonna be warranted because of that, at that point, we address it with that developer.
Okay.
Now, granted, you're not gonna get them to build a water treatment facility at a $3 million dime, you know, but it's always something that we can address with the developer at the development agreement or annexation agreement.
Alderman Schaefer?
And I think you said something key in there too. You said the economy of the time has a lot to do with this too. And I'm like, again, just going back to the neighboring communities, Cary did theirs in 2008 at the end of the boom. So maybe their fees are really high. They haven't done anything with them because they were, you know, based it on the economy of the time, correct? I mean, that's part of the equation. So there's a lot of things.
There's definitely a lot of variables.
Yeah. No, this is good.
Any other comments? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
For putting this together. Staff, good job. Thank you.
What's the next step with this?
So just real quick before you guys go, your recommendation to the city is option 2 for water, right?
That gets you the biggest bang, I think, for the buck, but, you know, it's really ultimately your choice.
Right, and so, you know, we struggled during these discussions, especially Doug and I, on the economic development standpoint, because we don't want to chase away development. But we have to be very careful that we understand the needs of the city, right? So we've turned away in the past 10 years that I'm aware of 2 developers because our existing fees were too high. And they didn't want to build. It wasn't until we reduced our fees that the builders were active and wanted to build in our community. So the decision on which option we go with, I think we have to take both things into consideration. you know, do we go with a lower cost fee and monitor it? And, cause I'll be honest with you, I don't think you're gonna see the 5,000 people in the next 10 years. You know, you're definitely not gonna see 10,000 in the next 20, I just don't see it happening, but I'm not an engineer, you know, I'm not, it's just, that's based on past. Doug, do you agree?
I agree with that.
I would hate to scare away development by increasing the fees by too much.
Well, and to add to that point, there also is just a decision that needs to be made as far as we can either take the approach that we're, I guess, incremental when we build and can slowly progress to this near future projection and meet it just fine, but we could reach a point where you could possibly run up short on the distant future. Or you could target that cost to prepare yourself for the distant future with a high fee, and you might build more than you need to. There's no way to perfectly prognosticate the population of the city of McHenry for the next 20 to 30 years.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, you know, all it seems like we keep talking about is this competition, and we want to be the bargain basement, well, maybe not the bargain basement, but we want to give a bargain in order to get residential development. We want to get residential development. It's fine, but not at the cost of the residents that are here now having to pay for part of that. And if our fees are too high compared to everybody else, well, so be it. I mean, as long as they can be justified, they shouldn't be lowered. If it's a justifiable rate, because we've done our study, then that's what our rate is. We shouldn't be discounting it to get more residential development. Because we've got a lot of infrastructure that needs to be caught up that's years and years and years old. And we keep talking about it. We've been talking about it for 22 years that I've been on the council. And yes, we've made some strides in some spots, and then we've taken another step back. And we need to have a long-range game plan, and we need to make sure that as we get more development going, that we are correcting a lot of our infrastructure problems. Because, hey, when we were complaining about roads 22 years ago, we had hardly anything going on in Boone Creek. Legend Lakes wasn't even thought of. Liberty Trails wasn't there. I mean, and how many more developments and how many more are already approved and coming? And we still haven't taken care of the problems that we've had for 22 years as far as being so far behind on our streets. So we need to come up with some very strong game plans for the future, and not all of it is discounting our fees, because we need every dime we can in order to make this community what it needs to be.
I don't think anyone's asking for a discount here. We're asking for the, you know, your idea of the population projection. Where do you think the city of McHenry is moving? Base that number. I mean, we could easily say, let's just charge them the most because we're gonna get the most bang for our buck, but is that realistically what's gonna happen?
I've just heard too many times of, oh, well, we gotta be competitive, we gotta be competitive. Well, we've gotta make sure that our costs are covered.
Well, it's important to recognize.
If it costs more to develop in McHenry, then I'm sorry, it costs more to develop in McHenry. Don't expect the residents that are here now to make that up.
It's important to recognize that any option we seriously entertain serves the entirety of the near future T projection, which goes out to 20 years.
Yeah. Yes, but I think we don't want to go the low route. We really don't. You know, I mean, let's face it, next year you want to raise, right?
I'll go on Miller.
I would just want to add to the discussion that the study is based on single family and attached single family. And I would want to bring to your attention that housing trends are saying that that's old model, and that we also need to start thinking about some new models in housing trends. Obviously duplex, multi-generational, fractional ownership, because that may change the equation on how properties are being built, developed, and sold. So we need to kind of shift our thought process to the future, if we're gonna shift the numbers, we need to be able to look at all potential developers and opportunities.
Alderwoman Miller, question. Considering you are, you know, deeply involved in real estate for a long time, have you seen a big change in the townhouses of how many family-oriented families you have now, as far as have 2 to 3 kids in a townhouse versus years back? I know the original Naperville formula used to downgrade very little impact with townhomes, and I think it's a lot more now than it used to be.
I think I can say that in a little different direction. The desire to own a home still exists for 65 to 70% of people who live in this country. The desire to mow grass and shovel snow does not exist. So, living in a zero lot line, a care community, or for us in the Midwest, a attached dwelling community where the shift of maintenance and the shift of care is someone else's problem is very attractive. So I don't think it's a familial decision, I don't think it's an aging decision, I think it's a I don't wanna do it decision. So it is becoming very attractive. And we here in McHenry are lacking some of the new housing options, and I think some developers are gonna bring that here. And say, hey, you're missing some styles of housing that are very attractive elsewhere, and we'd like to start to see them developed here.
I think,
So-
I understand what you're saying, but again, sometimes because that's just the trend right now, 5 years from now, it may change. I think of about 15 years ago or so, we had a developer that wanted to come in and wanted to build homes with front porches and very little front yard, and you know, designs of the 20s and 30s to bring neighborhoods back together and all that. And that was a trend that they were showing that was going on in certain communities, and I haven't heard about it much since then, you know.
So you can come into any community and you can find the outlier or the anomaly. You can drive through our community and you can pick out dates, ranges, eras of things that were built. That doesn't mean they're not attractive to someone, it just means you have to find the right person who's willing to take that project on. So as we move forward, we're still an attractive community, but all I'm suggesting is that our model is old and that we need to be aggressive in developing our new model so that we are attracting the new housing opportunities.
Alderman Schaefer?
Love talking to Sue. So, with that, the developers bring those things forward to us as well, correct?
Right.
Because that's where I know in communities such as Glenview, like where the old Naval Air Station was, they did some unique building and homes and stuff there. Really cute little neighborhoods and stuff, but that's the only place I've really seen it, but that was a developer's plan that was brought forth to that community, so.
Absolutely, so a developer would come forth and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is the land that I've identified, how does it fit, and what would my cost be?
Right, we've
So-
never turned anybody away from a plan, I don't think.
Right,
Well, for
but,
looking
you know,
at
again,
that, yeah.
if we're creating a plan, we might
For
as well
numbers
just,
based on single family versus.
we might as well just be creative and let Ross and Doug do their thing.
And Ross, you said, if I'm not mistaken, it was like, it's almost 2 to 1, multifamily versus single family for the last 10 years? Didn't you say it was like 300 to 150 or something?
158 single family and 362 multifamily. That's units, so
Right.
that's, you know, 6 units in one building, but yeah.
Do we know what are
That's just-
owner occupied and what are rentals? On the multifamily especially?
It's usually 25-30% rental.
Yeah, rental.
I'm sorry?
Usually 25-30% rental, maybe a little higher.
I think it's been a little higher lately. I've seen a lot of.
Same
lot of-
impact.
A lot of those type of developments
same impact.
renting out because they can't.
Could be a little higher.
I mean, it's the same impact on our infrastructure,
Mhm.
rental or non-rental, so.
Any other comments, questions? Ross, what kind of feedback besides what you've already received?
I think
You have some
we'll-
type of direction,
yeah, I
or
think-
do you want?
Yeah, we'll draft an ordinance to adjust the fees, and bring something back to council, within the next month or so.
Perfect.
Just so, thank you, it was very good presentation, very educational, in-depth. I just, when you bring it to us, if it could be, you know, done maybe week or two prior to that council meeting before the packets, is that possible to have that, just to be able to have an in-depth discussion individually with you at that time if we need it?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's trying to absorb a lot of information.
So.
And I'd like to be able to Q&A.
Right, and that's why I asked for the extension
Okay.
into January, because this was gonna be pretty comprehensive and a lot
Yeah.
to swallow. So, you know, if we bring an ordinance back and you're not comfortable with it, or you wanna make some changes, we have the time to do that. So I would rather have the discussion at the council level.
Thank
We do
you.
your packet, let you read it, we can have a discussion. If we don't pass the ordinance that night, we don't. You know, we make some adjustments.
Okay.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, this is probably what the first, presentation we've had from Baxter Woodman in many years that I can remember.
They were
And when I
just here
first
for
saw
the
Baxter
water.
Woodman, the first thing that went back in my mind was Carl Moon, and I said, oh, we're gonna have Carl Moon here, and I haven't seen him in years. Actually, I did see him about a year and a half ago.
Did you?
He's enjoying his retirement,
He
so.
is.
But, I just appreciate,
Oh, thank you.
what you guys do.
Well, we love being back, so thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Are you gonna stick around if they have questions at all?
Sure, we'd be happy to,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll close out this meeting here. Is there any staff reports this evening?
Yes. So, we received the 5-year highway improvement program from IDOT just today, in fact, and Route 31 received funding for Phase 2, right-of-way acquisition, utilities, construction, and construction engineering. So it is in the 5-year program. We have, based on our letter of intent correspondence, we have it was at the time a $2.7 million utility relocation fee, or cost. That's just IDOT estimate, it's not our own. So within the next year or so, it's probably time to start having some serious discussions about how to financially prepare ourselves for the utility relocation costs associated with that project, building our funding for it.
And that project extends from one.
It extends all the way from Crystal Lake to
To
120 here in town.
To 120, okay, thanks, just wanted to confirm that.
Alderman Schaper?
How's everything going on Pearl Street?
So we're substantially complete, with the exception of, we have some specialty lighting items that have some long lead times. We're anticipating end of the month, November. There's a couple of pours for some failed sections or unsatisfactory sections of stamped concrete that need to be completed, and then light poles going up end of November. And then while we're at Kern Road, resurfacing this week with some other associated work, landscaping, shouldering, guardrail, that'll be happening going into November.
Are the asphalt plants still open, obviously?
Yes, yeah. Probably till about Thanksgiving time, because when you start seeing asphalt plants close down.
Doesn't that,
Thank you.
Isn't that usually, depending on weather and temperatures, when they close? Depending on temperatures, they don't have exact dates.
It's also a matter of their needs in terms of how long, how many projects they still have to complete. A lot of times, you will see them keep them open and, hold out to try and get mixed down till the bitter end if they're under the gun as far as completion dates.
Alright, any other staff reports? None? Alright, I have nothing this evening. Alderman Santi?
Thank you very much, just keep it generic, thank you very much for the work done in the neighborhood over the past couple of weeks. Public Works.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah.
I brought up, the signs within our homes, they're still going up on the weekends. Do we start sending them a fine now? I mean, we just sent them a letter a while back.
They will
I
fine
gave them an
you.
extra week figuring sometimes with the red tape or whatever, or maybe what we need to do is to send them another letter and say, well, we got your signs at, Public Works. and dump it on Public Works.
Well,
I don't know.
we talked to them, they're probably gonna be coming before you on a variance, so I will talk to them again.
Well, right now, it's like this, they decide to come to council, but they are not following our ordinances at this point.
Correct.
And it makes me wonder if they didn't know right off all along that we don't typically put them in our, you know, the thing is it's unfair to a person like Roger Jerstad, and I'm not saying that there were times that I fight him on a lot of different negotiations as well. But I mean, a developer like that for years, we curtailed him from putting them in the right of way, and then we're gonna have another developer come in now, 20 years later, and just be able to start putting them around the city. And they just slap them up. You know, they don't care. I mean, they've got some service that just shoves them up there. And it just, you know, respect the community you come into. Just because we undercut our development fees doesn't mean that you willy-nilly have anything you wanna do. And that needs to be told to them that way. I mean, you know, that's, at least that's the feeling of this council member. How the others feel, I don't know, but all I'm saying is we got ordinances, we should be following. And we should be letting them know, and if they are ignoring it, and then they're gonna come to council with, oh, well, you know, we'd like, to be able to, you know, have a, conditional use or whatever, a variance for this. Well, you know, how does it look when they don't follow the ordinance in the first place? They just kind of slap us in the face, and now they want us to turn the cheek and just give them what they want. And that just irritates me because, again, yeah, we want some development, we want growth and everything else, but we don't want to just give everything away. And we need to let people know too, when they come to the city of McHenry, we're serious about what we do and what we say. And we don't want to just turn our backs and close our eyes to certain things just because, well, we don't want to offend somebody. You know, well, if we're not offending that person coming into the town, then we're offending the residents that we take and we were elected to represent. So, enough of that on my soapbox.
Any other?
The other thing I wanted to bring up was the fact that, you know, back months ago, we talked about committee meetings that we didn't need them because we were going to have committee of the wholes and all these things we were going to talk about in committee of the wholes and how many we had. And the thing is do we need to go back to committees and maybe we limit them, maybe once every 3 months or something, so that they're not every single month and just creating things, you know, just to have that meeting. But, you know, I think infrastructure is one of the things that we really need to have a lot of discussions on. And I don't want to wait until somebody comes forward to the council before we actually start delving into some of that. Let's be proactive and not reactive. So I think the council just needs to look at, is that what we need? Do we need to have community development meetings again? Maybe not every month, but maybe at least 4 times a year or so. Because we're not having the committee of the wholes like we talked we were gonna have.
I mean, I apologize for interrupting, but the purpose of the committee of the wholes or committee meetings when there was a topic that was needed to be discussed. So if a majority of the council wants to discuss whatever the topic is a committee of the whole, and a majority of the council tells us to put it on an agenda, and we have put it on as a discussion item, or if it's small enough, or if it requires a committee of the whole meeting, we can have a committee of the whole meeting. But we've been adding items on almost regularly as discussion items, which I consider as committee of the whole type topics. And I know that there's committees that have meetings scheduled, at least Public Works, to start talking about road program, you know, information. So that was the concept and the guidance provided by council was committee of the wholes if the topic's big enough, discussion items if we want to get guidance from council or they want to talk about an item or we need input on an item, committee meetings if there's a specific topic that's referred to a committee or if staff believes that there needs to be a committee discussion to hash an item out before it comes to council. And I think we followed that. If not, this is the first I'm hearing about it, so.
I just think there's a lot of issues out there that we really need to talk about, and you know, well, infrastructure for one. We could go on and on once a month for Public Works for 2 years.
When was the topic, roads or
Yeah.
what infrastructure?
Well, I don't
is
care
on?
if it's roads, it's sewers, it's drainage, it's, you know, a lot of, you know, the linings that we're doing. I mean, we talked about the impact fees that we had, really, we used to have a committee that used to discuss all that type of stuff of what we need and where we need it. And before it comes to council, that we would analyze the savings that we would have, because we by attrition lost a person for public works, and you know, and now we're contracting out. And is that the direction we want to go? I mean, that's something that the committee needs to bring forward to the council with recommendations. But if we're not going to discuss it as a committee of the whole, you know. So, I mean, to me, committee of the wholes were fine, rather than because I know there were some committees that were kind of abusing it as far as having a meeting every single month when it wasn't really needed. But there are committees that do need to get together and discuss things a lot more than what we're doing. At least that's my opinion.
Alderman Miller?
I just want to end the meeting on a great note, and thank Chief Burke. Last week, he accepted my invitation to come to my Red Hats meeting, and he was challenged by 20 senior citizens on everything he needed to know. And he did well. He got out alive, and he was an awesome representative for the city of McHenry. He got out alive.
Oh, alive. I thought you said he got out of line, which is.
No, he got out alive. So, it was my first road show with the chief, and he did an incredible job, answered questions all over the board, and I just want to thank you. You did a great job. I'm proud of you and glad to be working alongside you. Thank you.
Any others?
I told him not to put on that 10-gallon hat.
Did he wear a hat?
No, he came casual. It was good.
I'm talking about it, getting although he does deserve it, because he's done a lot for my constituents as well.
Motion to adjourn. Alderman Santi for.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Alderman
Second.
Miller. Please call the roll.
Alderman Santi.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik, oops, sorry. Alderwoman Bainey.
Yes.
Alderman Schaper.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Thank you all. Have a good night.